Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I'm one of your hosts, Amy Kinnison, here with Angela Belford. And if you are listening on the day that this episode is published, happy Halloween for everybody who celebrates. Today, we wanted to take a moment and dive into a really spooky, scary topic, being in business with your family. Dun, dun, dun. Cue the lightning crash and the lights all flicker, super scary topic, things that people do. The reason I would say this is really scary is because every time that I tell somebody I work with my family, they always have some type of big reaction. Maybe not always. Always is not accurate. Often the reaction is like, oh gosh, I could never do that. Nope, scary. No, thank you. Absolutely not. Angela, what about you? You've been doing this longer than I have. I just work with my parents. What about your experience with people who, when you tell them you work in a family business?
Well, interesting that they have a reaction, but then people will go, oh, you write books. You should write a book about how to be in business with your husband. I go, oh, I can write it for you right now. Page 1, don't do it. Page 2, the end. So I've certainly over the years said, like, don't do it. It's challenging for sure, but also there's a lot of fun. And I have to just remind myself of that sometimes. But often people do say, oh my gosh, I could never work with my husband. Oh my gosh, I could never work with my parents. And then yet Harvard says that Harvard Business Review recently said not up to 90% of businesses could be considered family-owned business in America. I thought that was fascinating. Most statistics put it somewhere in like the 70% range, which means more than half of businesses in America. And so I think that means like if you are an individual that owns a business, then you would be considered family owned. Theirs was like two family members, either current or subsequent. So like if I have a business and then my child takes over for me. Anyway, I haven't dug deep into all the ways that they make up these statistics, but it's a lot. It is a lot. And so when we're going through this whole fall semester, talking about emotions and feeling your feelings, it seems very relevant to talk about family business.
I agree. There was a short bit here at the Belford Group where I overlapped with my brother when he worked here. And I remember we had like a strategy meeting, I think it was last fall, where it was mom, dad, first child, second child, all sitting around the literal kitchen table in the literal house we grew up in, because we didn't have an office at the time. We were all working remote. So we met at home. And I was like, this is kind of bizarre. And even for me, sometimes thinking about Josh, he's still just like some knucklehead 12-year-old, not like a full-grown man with a wife and a job and a career and a bank account. That kid doesn't have a bank account. That kid barely knows how to spell bank account. Like, I don't know. So there's a little bit of it that it's weird sometimes with siblings. I think if he and I worked together longer, that probably would have worn off over time, but he's very professional and not at all knucklehead 12-year-old. So even siblings, cousins, sometimes aunts, uncles, things like that are also families that people get in business with.
Yeah. So I feel like even though we bought the company and then rebranded it as the Belford Group, so often people think we're the founders, and I'm like, sort of, yeah, kind of. I think we're both. We bought an existing business from another couple that was working together. And then we also founded a pretty large division of the company that, was brand new, wasn't part of the original purchase. I feel like I'm second generation family owned business. And that goes back to my Uncle Jim. I was 10 when he started his own business. He had been working for his aunt and uncle, and they had a falling out. And he decided to start his own business. And so when he was out on a call, and if Aunt Mary had to go pick up one of my cousins, sibling essentially, or had to go to the grocery store or whatever, then I might be the only one that was available to answer the business phone. And so I'm sure it was not very often, even though as a little kid, it felt like it. Uh, and so I would have to like answer the phone, DJ's truck service, and they would tell me what was wrong with their truck. And I would have to write down, like, okay, what road are you on? You know, are they going east, west, north, south? What mile marker are you at? And if I didn't get that information right, then that truck driver would be stuck on the side of the road and Uncle Jim would lose business. And, you know, that was how we were eating. And so it was a little bit of pressure. And then I would have to page him, because we didn't have cell phones back then. So I'd have to page him and he would have to call back, and I would have to, not only so I've had to absorb it, then I have to give it back. Fast forward when my Uncle Jim was in his 50s and he went to work one Saturday. He had been getting treatment for his lung cancer and worked half day on Saturday and went into the hospital because he collapsed and flatlined, and they revived him. And he was in the hospital and went to hospice. And 3 weeks later, he passed away. And that I mean, he didn't take a lot of vacations. He was never at any of our activities. We weren't allowed to be in Girl Scouts because they had a business. I mean, there were so many different things that like the business really impacted how he lived his life. And so many of the ideas I have about how business should go is basically, this is how I saw it done. Let's not do that. Furthermore, nobody thinks they're going to die at 56. Like, that's just not a thing. And so he really hadn't planned ahead. And so, that was in October. Come January, my cousins are trying to figure out the business. They're like, can you please come up here and like help with like, getting W-2s out and doing all the taxes and all of that sort of stuff. I'm like, I have to love you a lot to go to Ohio in January.
To do taxes.
To do taxes, right? Like, I had to just help them get everything ready to take to the accountant. Anyway, whatever. So I feel like I'm second generation, even though I didn't run that business and I didn't, I was there and in some key points in the existence, and learned a whole lot about how not to do it.
I think for me, what's interesting, my experience with family business, not only do I work here at the Belford Group and I am the daughter of the owners and CEO and things like that, but in my previous role, I actually worked at a family office for an ultra wealthy family. And what's so interesting is that even though it was a very corporate space, there still was such an influence of family within it. And you had to be mindful that you were asking for decisions to be made between, a son and a cousin. And this person is going to be having a meeting with their aunt, and different times like that where you would just sit back and the decisions they're making and the work that's happening. And you're like, and these people are just brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, moms, dads. Even occasionally, like their young children would come running through the office. And like, yeah, that's just normal, is kind of what happened. And so I feel like then my whole working history has to do with family business, because I spent 5 years there working just really heavily. My coworkers were not family, no, but the purpose and the drive for what we did was actually in very specific service to a family. So that was really interesting. That perspective that I kind of carry as well, and how family can influence very corporate positions and that kind of work. Angela, a question I want to ask you in regards to family business. Well, actually, hold on. Let me zoom out a second. Not everybody you might be sitting here listening. Hopefully you've listened to this 10 minutes in. If you're like, why would I keep listening? Because I don't work in a family business. I don't really have a family business. I don't plan on starting one. What's the point here? I think that some of the point, one, could always be empathy, learning about people around you, that not just, Angela and I in a family business, but you're going to interact with a lot of people in your life. And so there can be some awareness there. And two, I still think that there are a lot of principles that we're going to talk about, emotions in family business, that don't just apply to when you're working with your mom and dad, but they also can apply when you're working with your boss and when you're working with other people. And so hopefully we can sort of expand perspective to allow us to bring more of our humanity into the workplace, that you are still a person in a family, even at your job.
Well, and if the stats are right that somewhere between 70 and 90% of businesses in America are owned by a family, and I know we have international listeners, so I haven't looked up the stats for Canada and France and UK. Shout out to all of our people there. But that means that there's a good chance that even if you don't currently work for a family business, at some point in your career, you probably will work for a family business. That could mean that you work for an individual. So if your boss owns the business, we see this a lot in service-based business, whether it's in construction or electricians or builders. I mean, all of those businesses are family owned. I mean, even one of the largest real estate firms here in Northwest Arkansas, actually, I would say all of the real estate firms here, they may have a franchise, but they're owned by people, right? So there's a human touch to this that is. We also have some very large family owned businesses that are now Fortune 500. I mean, Tyson is right here, JB Hunt is right here. So there's still an element, even though those are now corporate businesses, you can still feel the culture of family. And I don't mean it in the way of like, oh, look, everybody's taking care of everybody. I'm not trying to like oversell that idea, but there's an element to where the major shareholders in some of those corporations are the family members.
I will say I have a close friend who works for a family business, and so they said, we, treat everybody here like family, not just the ones who are actually family. And I responded, I said, does that mean they can treat you like crap? Is this why they treat you like crap? Because you still have to show up at Thanksgiving? Because that was a little bit of how they treated family and business. Is doesn't matter what I do, because we are family and blood and we still have to be together. So what can you do about it? To which my response to my friend was, you're not actually family and you don't actually have to stay. And horrible segue, but we're going to do it anyway, really illustrates why handling emotions with family and in the workplace matters. And so, Angela, what are your thoughts when it comes to just addressing emotions in the workplace, with family or not?
Yeah, I think what I like to say is that corporations can pretend that emotions aren't impacting their business and their productivity, but family businesses can't pretend that they are, because if the owner is going through a health situation I know of situations that, divorce between business partners, like actual marital divorce, all of that impacts business in such huge ways. And corporations can pretend that somebody that's going through a divorce can leave their self at the door, their personal problems at the door, even though we know that that's kind of garbage. So the thing about it is that another reason why I want to talk about this, and the reason why our business is narrowing our focus over the next few months to really serving family business, is because I feel strongly that when we strengthen family business, we strengthen our communities and we make people better humans and better employees and better community members, that we literally do make the world a better place. And you can like scoff at that if you want. I don't care if you scoff at it, because I truly believe that like when I can help someone be a better human, and then they're a better parent to their child, whether that child is a toddler or an adult, like the world is better. The like good wins, because we've reduced stress and we can have more fulfilling life. Because the bottom line is that I think when people go into business with family, sometimes they go into business with family because they feel like it's all they can do. I met somebody last night, I was at a food festival-y thing, and this lady walks by and was chatting with us. She goes, I retired and moved up here, and I thought that I was going to be just hanging out with my daughter. I didn't know she was starting a business. So for the first 3 months of her business, I had to work there. And I did not bother to tell her you didn't have to work there, but she saw her daughter struggling, and so she did. And she goes, now she's hired some staff, but they don't work as hard as the family does. And it was super sweet. And she, was being sassy. You could tell she really loved her daughter. And so there is an element where the people that are closest to, we want what's best for them. We do want them to succeed, and we want them to do well. And it doesn't always get executed well. But I think there's an element which, when we go into business with family, it's because we really do love them and we really do enjoy being around them. And there is an element where I feel like I can trust my closest family members. That's not the case with everybody. And that's not every one of my family members that I would trust. But there's an element where you theoretically can trust people a little bit more.
I also think, to go a step further than just, if we're taking care of people, that leads to better communities. When we take care of emotions and when we're willing to address emotions in the workplace, one of the things that can do is that can prevent people from taking those emotions out on places outside the workplace. And so being able to address, I'm frustrated with this coworker and I'm going to handle that with this coworker here at work, makes it less likely that they're going to go home and take it out on their spouse, their kids, their neighbor, the person they're driving next to on their ride home. And so I think that, as difficult and challenging as it can be sometimes, it is still really important to address the emotions at work. For me, within my experience here at the Belfer Group, one of the things super vulnerably that has been hard for me, I say super vulnerably, I wrote an article about it that got published in Fast Company. I don't know, I can say it's that, like, whatever. It's not like it's a brand new thing to share, but the voice in my head growing up that I heard that sometimes was the, this is disappointing, you're a disappointment, you're not enough, was not actual things my mom said to me, but it was at times my mom's voice. And so then at work, when I got feedback that was, this is disappointing, all of that childhood stuff came up, and it was so much harder for me to just receive the feedback from a boss to an employee, because not only was it like, oh, this is one of my toxic waste barrels that I need to address, but also it's being said by somebody who I still have some of that hurt from when I was younger. Now, what's really interesting, actually, Angela, I don't know that we've reflected on this. That was before that incident where I cried because I felt like I was being a disappointment. That was before we started doing a lot of this emotional processing work with you and I. And I'd be really interested to see if that came up again in the future. If we were put in a similar situation, I don't know that I would have the same reaction, because I have done a lot of work within myself to heal and to unpack that I'm not enough belief. And so then when somebody at work says something that could step on that belief, I'm not enough, it didn't have as much impact. It doesn't have as much impact anymore. I can hear things like, I don't have enough hours in the work week to accomplish all the tasks I have in front of me. And that doesn't have to be, Sammy is not enough. That can just be a mathematical formula that the amount of work, the time it takes to do that, and the amount of hours and the time it would be to accomplish that, A does not equal B kind of thing, which is just such a difference than that value statement. So I know we've been saying it all fall, but we really do mean it. Take a moment to reflect and engage. Go back and listen to some of those episodes about just tuning into your body, and then stay tuned for some couple episodes coming up about these beliefs and the ways that you can help unpack them yourself.
Yeah, I think in addition to you having that leftover hurt that I was the voice, I mean, I definitely struggled with, I needed my kids to be perfect. It's especially my firstborn, I needed you to be perfect so that I looked like I was okay, like that I was enough. And if you aren't perfect, then that's a reflection on me. So I had to do that healing as well. And there's a lot of people that haven't even stopped to think about that. I think one of the most prevalent things that is detrimental to emotional success and emotional resilience is the idea, and I think it is super poisonous, that stuff that happened to me before doesn't affect me now. And I just want to be like, that's adorable that you think that, because I can give you all of this evidence to show that it does. And it's like, no, no, no. I mean, I said this. I've been to therapy. I don't need to cry some more about this. And I didn't need to cry some more. I actually just needed to let the emotions kind of bubble up and return back to homeostasis. I needed to allow them to come to the forefront so that then they could release. There was just some leftover sensations tucked in the cells of my body. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean I'm a horrible person. It doesn't mean I haven't done any work. It just means that there's a piece of the healing still left to be done, you know? And so I think that when people try to hold on to the idea that happened to me 30 years ago, that's not affecting me now. Well, okay, then what's causing you to be a raving lunatic? Because you are being a raving lunatic right now, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that, go.
Mike, before you keep going, you said when you were younger, I had to be perfect because that was a reflection on you, slightly facetiously, but also curiously. How do you feel about this now? I think it's even more intense than 5-year-old Sammy who showed up to school wearing crazy clothes. Like, there's also an element to that. I think rationally, a lot of us are going to look at the 5-year-old and be like, well, clearly the 5-year-old won in a fight with parents, which is fine. But now as an adult, I could see it actually being trickier to work with me, that like, if I was to go into a client meeting, does it reflect back on you if I do poorly? Not only as the owner of the business, but also as your daughter. Is that like a double edge?
I'm sure there are lots of people that's a problem for. I don't think it is for me, because there's so often that your strengths fill in my weaknesses in such cool ways that I'm just like, oh, praise God.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Like, oh, whoosh, yeah. All right. Together, we're all human. I don't mean that in like, I'm half a human. I just mean like that we balance each other out, even though we do have similar strengths in some areas.
Wasn't there somebody who wanted to hire? Tell the story.
So back in 2001, we had this guy that was getting to know us, and he was sending us a lot of business. He was referring business to us. He's like, wait. So let me get this straight. Your husband is this crazy awesome programmer. This guy claimed, the best access developer in the state. And you are a genius in marketing. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm a genius, but I have a degree in it, and
I dabble.
I've been in. I'm really good at sales. Yeah, sure. He goes, I don't want to hire you guys. Call me in 15 years. I want to hire your children. And there have been so many times where I just think, man, John was right, because they do get the best of us. Josh was in kindergarten, and the teacher said that the kids would have problems with the computer, and she would be like, don't talk to me. Go ask Josh. I have no idea, because Josh was born into computers all around. And that was just very comfortable and natural.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Even recently, we have a client where I am threading the needle between the high level strategy and the nitty gritty details. And it does sort of feel like I am the holding the in between what the skills and advantages you bring for the client and the skills and advantages that Barry brings for the client, and I'm not doing either one 100% of what you guys can do, but I can do solid 80% of what both of you guys have got.
Sure. Well, and So I don't know. I think it definitely could be that way. I think there's another thing that I see sometimes. There's sort of two sides of that pendulum. Is one is, oh golly, my kid is going to make me look bad, and then there's the complete total opposite where they just have a complete blind spot to how detrimental the child is. And it's very hard when, I'm a big believer in good to great and making sure you have the right person on the seat or on the bus and in the right seat. And there's times where people expect things of their children, and either the child is just not gifted in the same way or not interested in the same way and in the same things and just aren't a good fit. And so that can be really hard. It can be really painful because you are trying to put these expectations on your kid and you don't see that it's stressing them out. You don't see that they're performing poorly. You don't see that there's other staff members that are having to take up the slack for this person. And that can be kind of the opposite problem with this.
Another space, sorry, now I'm just like thinking through stories of working together in family business. One of the things I want to talk about is sort of the balance between your role as family members and then your role within the business. There was a situation we had one of our vendors while you and Barry were out on vacation. Barry normally is the primary contact for this. It does feel weird right now to be saying Barry instead of Dad, but anyway, Barry is normally primary contact for this vendor, and I had to step in and help with that. And the vendor was not very kind and generous towards me. It was very frustrating encounter. And my dad called the vendor, not Barry. My dad called them to chew them out for how they treated me. And it was one of the very few times that I have seen. I very often can work with Barry and he and I can be coworkers and work on projects and it's fine. And pretty rarely does my dad show up in those moments in like a negative, in any other kind of way. It's just coworkers. And that day in particular, I was like, no, I think he would have stood up for other employees in a similar way. I think that the intensity. Yeah. I was like the anger that really came through was because somebody yelled at his daughter and made his daughter cry, and you will not make my daughter cry. No. And so that was really interesting to see where he showed up as a dad instead of a coworker, which is fine. It's not all bad. It's not all wrong. It just is. And then what about you, Angela?
It's funny. Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because I remember a conversation I had with a friend of mine that was like, Sammy and Josh, even when you were working in that other family office, you would sometimes call me and go, I want to talk to my mom. I don't want to talk to the CEO. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear your perspective. I just want you to be on my side. And there were plenty of times that you were like, can you give me a perspective of a supervisor or somebody? Because I don't understand how they got to this place and I don't understand. It feels really unfair. So there were most of the time you wanted me to give you that perspective of having been in business for a very long time. But there were every now and again, and Josh would do the same thing. And my friend said, do you think that Lexi knows to ask for the difference? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And she's a lot younger than you guys. I mean, she's several years younger than you. So I don't know that she did. And so when Josh was in New Zealand and COVID was hitting, and he was trying to help me make decisions. And I said, Josh, I am having to give you like CEO Angela. You are not talking to your mom, because your mom would say, get on the plane. I don't care what it costs. But CEO Angela is going to give you like, okay, let's apply logic. Let's apply reason. And I had to like clamp that mom down. But
because mom said, get my baby in my lap right now.
Right. And that ended up being the wrong decision because New Zealand fared far better and they opened up faster. He could have had free rent, but I just couldn't handle him being that far away. But anyway, it's been interesting because then I've kind of given Lexi that secret decoder ring to say, like, okay, do you want mom just to be on your side, or can I give you another perspective? Because I'm not sure that you're seeing this correctly. And I think that communication is key.
Yeah. Something else that I think of as a difference, I think, between family business and being the family in the business and then not being the ones owning the business in the family can be like the boundaries and the intensity at which you work on the business. I would say this is both a pro and a con. Okay, hear me out. Pro is that the dedication to do what it takes and to get it done. And there were times growing up, you guys would be there at school plays and you would be there at soccer practice, but then you would also be on the couch working in the evening after that and would work. I don't know. My memory is long hours. I was like, I actually can't tell you definitively how long you worked, but a lot of hours. That can be a pro for the dedication to the business. It can also be a con in that the boundaries can get pushed a lot easier. And like, well, it's the family. I got to keep doing this and I got to keep working. And I think that sometimes having the separation between work and outside of work life can be beneficial at different times. And even like you've talked about when you go on vacation, like a true vacation, not these working vacations that you go on, these working travel trips, that it's hard for you to disconnect mentally. Whereas for better or worse, it's not hard for me to disconnect mentally because I had 5 years corporate and my habits to say, nope, peace out. It's my time now, not business time.
Well, you're also not it's not your job title yet to be responsible to make sure that there's money in the account, to make sure that everybody's payroll is paid. That's a very different level of responsibility. Someday it might be your responsibility. And when that day is here, then you may have a little harder time. So I think some of that is I have chosen to have staff and to take good care of them. And so because of that, I need to make sure. And I've made promises. Your name's on the door. You make promises to clients. Like I want to be a person of my word. I don't know what everybody else feels. So there can be challenges. I think it's also one of the times that I have the hardest time doing boundaries is when we're working on something new and fun and exciting. Because when you worked corporate, if I was excited about like my new book, my new project, my whatever, you would drive home from work. Okay, what's going on? What's going on? And so it's hard because I get a little bit all consumed when I'm working on like a new thing. And I don't know that I'm working all that many hours. I'm thinking a lot of hours. I spend a lot of time thinking. And so and I love talking about it. And it's like, no, I would have talked to you about this if you worked a different job and that you don't want to be working all the time. And I don't want to be working all the time. So anyway, that's, I think for me, it's when it's harder. When things aren't going well, I can turn it off and be like, no, let's go.
Well, and I think early on when I started, I was hourly, not salary. And so I definitely employed the tactic where you would talk about, if it started to get really too granular, to be like, oh, and on Monday, don't forget. And I'd be like, oh, hold on 1 minute. Let me write down the time so I can make sure to clock this later. And that was a really soft boundary set to say, it's not that you're not allowed to talk about work, but you are going to pay me to talk about work right now.
Mm-hmm. And I do try to be careful. And one of the ways that we do, I think, and lots of people can, we don't, you can hear Sammy calls us Barry and Angela at work. I guess I just call you Sammy and Sammy.
Actually, your name. Fun fact people want to know about me. The longer you know me, the more likely it is that you're going to call me Sam. And you actually don't call me Sammy and Sam. You don't call me Sammy and Sam. You don't call me Sammy and Sammy. You call me Sammy and Sam. When we're outside of work, you and Barry both do it. And my husband only calls me Sam now. And it's really interesting because people are like, but your name's not Sam. Some people, if you don't know me long enough, they're like, oh, that feels weird. It's Sammy. It's not Sam. And I'm like, just wait. At some time, it will switch and you will start calling me Sam and you won't realize it. But you, Barry, Josh, Lexi almost exclusively call me Sam unless we're at work, and you and Barry both call me Sammy. I don't know that you're doing it consciously.
I'm fascinated by that because of what it brings up for me. And because in the family-owned business that I worked in, my Uncle Jim had other family members that came to work for him from time to time. And one of my least favorite uncles was named Sam. And so it's funny that I ended up naming you that. Anyway, but that's hilarious. I've never thought of that. And I'm like, I did not know that. That's funny.
Yeah, there was a point when I really started to identify and recognize this was when I got married, and there was some time that Chris was talking to his family on the phone, and he said, "Yeah, Sam and I are going to come down this date, whatever." And his mom and his sister were both there, and they're like, "Who's Sam? Who are you talking about?" And it was they're just complete. I have no idea who you're talking about. And he goes, "My wife? I don't understand how you don't understand." So that's really when I started tuning into this and have been doing my own private research on that I have two names and not everybody knows it.
Okay. So let's what's the bottom line here for people to learn besides they got to hear some great family stories? I think people hopefully always pick up some nuances in the stories.
They're allegories. We do lots of allegories around here. I think that what I would encourage people to take away is don't be afraid to face the hard stuff. Be bold and courageous and address the big emotions. I recently had a big fight with Barry at work, and I got real activated. I started crying. I walked away. I sent him a text and said, "I need you to come meet me outside because I don't want to have the fight in front of the other coworkers." And he and I got to have a really beautiful repair, sort of that relationship cycle breaking and then repairing. And it was so good to have that, not only with my coworker, but with my dad. And be bold, face the emotion, use all the good tips. I'm not saying just vomit all over people, but there is an element like I statements. What is the action items? How can we have approached this differently? Own up to your own areas. Leave space for other people to own up to theirs. You might end up with something really beautiful.
I think if I could give people the biggest takeaway that I hope that they have, and I think often we get into the habit of treating our family, we're the most relaxed, we're the most put our guard down, ideally. And because of that, we don't take care of their hearts, and we think it's okay to just treat them badly, and we think it's okay to just they get the worst version of ourselves. So then if that bleeds over into work, just realize, and I'm going to get morbid for a minute, but think about if they weren't here. How would that feel? How would you wish you would have treated them? I love to get my future self involved in this, and maybe not give your family the worst version of yourself. And if you can resolve some of these toxic waste barrels of emotion, if you need help with that, we can help. If you can get rid of some of those, then you can begin to treat your family the way you really, really want to be treated and way you want them to be treated. Because, I've just lost too many people. I wish my Uncle Jim were still here. I wish he wouldn't have died at 56. I wish he were here to still tell us, how we could do things better. And instead, he didn't take care of himself, and he didn't, he gave the best years of his life to that business, and I don't get to have him here to help raise my grandkids, So just appreciate your family and work through your crap, man. Do the work. Free yourself from the crap in your head. And if you don't know how, read my book, Traveling Light. In case I haven't told you, you absolutely read it. It will absolutely change your life. I'm super pumped. It is going to be on Audible soon. And I'm working on a workbook for it because people are like, hey, this is in depth. And so I've had requests, and we're going to be working on a workbook soon. So,
not only that, but also, you don't have to do it alone. If all of this sounds scary, if it sounds really difficult to figure out how to not only get yourself to this new place, but also your parent, your spouse, your business partner, whoever it is, You don't actually have to do it alone. You can get help. You can build community with other people in similar situations, so people who understand family business. If you are interested in any of that and any help within the situation, you can always reach out to us, our email, or send us a message, or our website, any of those things. We would love to talk with you and offer some perspective. Maybe there's something that we can offer that would be supportive to you. For now, I hope that the next time you get the question or the response, I work in a family business, and somebody says, oh, I couldn't imagine, you can say, you know what? It's actually not that bad. I really enjoy it. I wish all of that big, warm, fuzzy feeling for everybody out there, actually, no matter what you do. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and go be freaking awesome.